The city never slept. Its streets were alive with shadows, the neon lights flickering in puddles left by the evening rain. Mist curled along the alleys like silent ghosts, hiding faces and secrets alike. Isabella walked with calm confidence, her heels tapping softly on the wet cobblestones, her dark coat brushing against her knees. She moved like someone who belonged, though most of the city would never guess the life she truly led. She paused at a street corner, her eyes catching a familiar face across the road. Her chest tightened, and for a moment, a memory she had tried to bury surged forward. Liam, her ex, the man who had once mocked her dreams and told her she would never be anyone. He stood there, hands in his coat pockets, staring at her with a smirk that had once made her skin crawl. "Isabella?" His voice carried a mixture of surprise and amusement. "Who would have thought? You're still here?" She let a faint smile touch her lips, cold but controlled. "I'm always here," she replied, her voice soft, but carrying a quiet power. Liam chuckled, shaking his head. "Who would even marry you?" The words landed like stones in her chest, but she let them pass through her without reaction. The old wounds it had once opened were still there, but now they burned with a different fire, a fire of triumph and survival. What Liam didn't know, what no one could guess, was that she already had a life far beyond his imagination. Isabella was married not to a man, but to Seraphine Dusk, the name whispered in fear and awe throughout the city. Seraphine, the Mafia boss, whose power was absolute, whose influence stretched from the highest towers to the darkest alleys. And Isabella was not just her wife, she was her confidant, her partner, her equal, in a world where weakness was fatal. As Liam stepped closer, squinting in the dim light, Isabella's eyes flicked to the shadows behind him. Seraphine, always watching. She was there, as silent and imposing as a dark queen, her coat flowing like liquid midnight around her. Her eyes glimmered with a warning that sent a shiver down Isabella's spine, but it was a shiver she welcomed. "You've changed," Liam said, still unaware, his tone attempting familiarity, though he could not hide the disbelief. "I have," Isabella replied simply. Her words held no invitation, no warmth, only truth. Before Liam could respond, a sudden shout erupted from a nearby alley. Figures emerged, masked, dangerous, and fast. Isabella didn't hesitate. Years of survival had trained her reflexes. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small, heavy object, a weapon disguised as an ornament, and held it tightly. The attackers hesitated, then advanced. Seraphine stepped forward then, her presence magnetic, commanding. The air seemed to thrum with her power, and the attackers faltered, fear flickering in their eyes. A single gesture from her, and the first man went sprawling, incapacitated with precise force. Isabella moved beside her, coordinating instinctively. The pair worked like a storm, silent, deadly, and beautifully in sync. When the attackers fled, beaten and humiliated, Liam's mouth fell open. He had no idea what he had just witnessed. And worse, he had no idea who stood beside him. You're married?" he asked, voice barely more than a whisper. Isabella's lips curved slightly, but her eyes stayed on Seraphine, who now studied her with a faint, approving smile. "Yes. Married. And you—" She paused, letting the weight of her gaze sink in. "You are not part of this world. You never were." Liam swallowed hard, realizing the truth he had never considered. The girl he had mocked, the girl he had dismissed, was now powerful, untouchable, and far beyond his understanding. His eyes darted between Isabella and the woman standing behind her, the same woman whose reputation alone could crush empires. Seraphine reached out, lightly touching Isabella's arm. A small, possessive gesture that spoke volumes. Isabella's pulse quickened, not with fear, but with a strange thrill. The connection between them was invisible, but undeniable. It was not just love, it was power, trust, and a bond forged in danger and ambition. Liam's shock turned to resentment. "You're playing a game, aren't you?" he said. His voice wavered as he tried to mask his awe. "No game," Isabella said quietly. "This is reality. My life. Something you could never touch or understand." Liam looked away, his mind racing, trying to reconcile the woman he had once known with the figure now standing before him. She moved with calm authority, with elegance that could kill with a glance, and a mind that could outthink armies. The old arrogance he carried seemed suddenly small, insignificant. As he turned to leave, muttering something about having been wrong, Isabella's mind wandered briefly to her own past fears. She had been weak once, vulnerable to the world's scorn. Liam's words had hurt her more than she cared to admit. But that person was gone. She had grown, endured, and emerged stronger not in spite of the shadows, but because of them. Seraphine's voice, low and melodic, broke through her thoughts. "He will never understand. Let him go." Isabella nodded, letting Liam retreat into the foggy night. She could feel the weight of his gaze linger on her back, a ghost of the past trying to cling to the present. But there was no room for ghosts here. Only survival, power, and the love that bound her to Seraphine. As they walked together through the misty streets, Isabella finally allowed herself a small sigh of relief. The city was dangerous, yes, but in Seraphine's arms, in her world, she was safe. And more than safe, she was respected, feared, and loved in a way that mattered. "Did he recognize you?" Isabella asked. Curiosity tinged with amusement. Seraphine's lips curved in a rare, soft smile. "He saw only what he wanted to see. The world sees only what it is ready for, and they never see me coming." Isabella chuckled softly. "Good. Let him keep wondering. Let everyone keep wondering. Let them think the girl they knew is gone. Gone, but not forgotten," Seraphine said, brushing a strand of Isabella's hair back from her face. Her touch was gentle, yet it carried the authority of a queen. "Never forgotten, because she is mine." The streets stretched ahead, empty and silent, except for the soft hum of the city's heartbeat. Neon lights glimmered in puddles like fragments of a broken dream. Isabella walked beside Seraphine, hand brushing the other's arm lightly, feeling the weight of their unspoken connection. There were dangers to come, challenges that would test their bond. But in this moment, they were untouchable. For the first time in a long while, Isabella felt the thrill of true power. Not the kind measured in wealth or fear, but the kind that comes from belonging, from being understood, and from loving someone who would never let you falter. The night deepened, and with it, the shadows stretched long and wide. Somewhere in the distance, Liam's figure disappeared into the mist, leaving Isabella with a quiet satisfaction. He had mocked her once, but now he knew nothing. Nothing about the love that burned between her and Seraphine, hotter and darker than the city itself. And yet, Isabella knew this was only the beginning. The world she lived in was cruel and unforgiving, and those who wished her harm were not finished. She felt the pulse of the city in her veins, a rhythm that matched her own heartbeat. Danger awaited. Betrayal waited. And somewhere, the ghosts of the past lingered, unseen, waiting for a crack in her armor. But tonight, she was untouchable. Tonight, she was free. Tonight, she was married to power, to love, to a bond stronger than fear itself. And no words, no sneer, no doubt, no past love could change that. As Isabella and Seraphine disappeared into the misty alleys, hand brushing hand, the city seemed to whisper their names, carrying them into the shadows where legends were born. Somewhere in the darkness, a faint whisper lingered her ex's words, meaningless now, fading into nothing. Who would even marry you? But Isabella smiled, a secret curl of satisfaction on her lips. She was married, and her world, her empire, her love was hers to command. The night was young, the city alive. And the story of Isabella, the girl who had risen from doubt and scorn, had only just begun. The next morning, the city awoke under a pale, gray sky. Rain had stopped, but the streets were still slick, reflecting the light from shop signs and distant traffic like scattered jewels. Isabella moved quietly through the city, her mind alert, her senses tuned to every shadow. She wore a simple coat and gloves, but her presence alone carried authority. Beside her, Seraphine walked with that same calm, deliberate stride, her eyes scanning the streets as if they belonged to her, and in a sense, they did. Isabella had grown used to the silent power that radiated from her spouse, the way her gaze could command respect without a single word. It was a dangerous power, but Isabella had long learned to navigate it, not as a victim, but as a partner. "Do you think he'll come back?" Isabella asked softly, glancing at Seraphine. Seraphine's eyes, dark and sharp, flicked toward the alley where Liam had disappeared. Curiosity has a way of pulling the foolish back, and some men cannot resist looking at what they once dismissed. "He may return, but he will see nothing but shadows." Isabella nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. Liam had always underestimated her, and now he had no idea how far she had grown. No idea what life she had carved for herself in the shadows of this city. No idea that the girl he had mocked was now married to one of the most powerful women alive. Their morning was interrupted by a sudden alert from one of Seraphine's lieutenants. A rival family had been spotted in the northern district, a move that could threaten Seraphine's influence, if not addressed quickly. Isabella felt the familiar thrill of strategy and survival ignite within her. She had learned long ago that power required vigilance, that every action had consequences, and that the smallest mistake could mean disaster. As they approached the northern district, the streets became narrower, the buildings older and taller, their shadows long and menacing. Isabella felt the city shift around her, a living organism aware of her presence. The rival family's mark was their graffiti on a crumbling wall, a symbol warning of defiance and challenge. "Looks like trouble," Isabella said quietly. "Trouble is a constant companion," Seraphine replied, her tone even but deadly. "But so are we, and we do not bow to it." They entered a small, abandoned warehouse, the sound of their steps echoing off concrete walls. Inside, the rival family's men were gathering, unaware that the true storm had arrived. Isabella's pulse quickened not with fear, but with anticipation. This was a test of wit, speed, and courage, and she had never been one to shy away from it. Seraphine moved first, commanding the room with a presence that was impossible to ignore. Her voice, low and precise, carried through the space. "Leave. Now. Or face the consequences." The men hesitated, exchanging nervous glances. Isabella stepped forward beside Seraphine, her own confidence radiating. "You were warned," she said, her voice firm, calm, unyielding. "Leave before this gets messy." One man, bolder than the others, sneered and took a step forward. In a fluid motion, Isabella blocked his path, her stance steady. The man faltered, unsure of how a woman could hold such strength. The room held its breath. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. With a single gesture, she indicated that the man should leave. The tension in the room broke like a snapped rope. And one by one, the men retreated, knowing instinctively that resistance was pointless. Isabella exhaled softly, the rush of adrenaline still thrumming through her. She turned to Seraphine, meeting her gaze. There was approval there, subtle but undeniable. A silent acknowledgement of skill, loyalty, and understanding. Later, back in the sanctuary of Seraphine's hidden estate, Isabella allowed herself a moment of reflection. The city beyond their walls was dangerous, unpredictable, and unforgiving. But inside, she found a strange peace. Here, she and Seraphine shared a bond that was unbreakable. A bond built on trust, power, and love. Yet, even in the quiet, the past lingered. Liam. The memory of his words, the sneer he had worn so easily, remained a small, persistent echo in her mind. He had no idea what she had become. He had no idea the life she led, the strength she wielded, or the love she shared with Seraphine, and Isabella intended to keep it that way. But fate, as always, has a way of testing resolve. That evening, a message arrived, sent through channels only those who understood the city's shadows would notice. A simple note, written in ink that seemed to shimmer slightly under the candlelight. Not everything stays hidden. Some truths will find you. Isabella's eyes narrowed. Someone knew. Someone was aware of her life, of her marriage, of the power she now held. The thrill of challenge mingled with a prickling caution. This city had secrets, and not all of them were friendly. Seraphine noticed the change in her expression immediately. "Trouble?" she asked, her voice low. "Perhaps," Isabella admitted, handing her the note. "Someone knows more than they should. Someone may come looking." Seraphine read the message, her expression unreadable. Then, a slow, deliberate smile curved her lips. "Let them come. But know this. We do not fear the shadows. We command them." Isabella felt the truth in that statement settle in her chest. They had survived threats before, conquered enemies, and emerged stronger. But this was different. The past was stirring, and with it, the ghosts of doubt, judgment, and old wounds. The night deepened, and with it, the city took on a darker hue. The streets seemed alive with whispers and movement, carrying news of the growing tension. Isabella moved through the estate's corridors, her mind sharp, anticipating every possible threat. "Do you think Liam might be involved?" she asked quietly, though more to herself than to Seraphine. Seraphine's gaze met hers, steady and piercing. "He is a shadow of the past. He does not know the rules of this world. He would not survive even a moment here. Not without falling." Isabella allowed herself a small, ironic smile. Liam had always believed himself clever, strong, and untouchable. He had never imagined that the girl he had dismissed could rise so far beyond his reach. And yet, the thought of him approaching, unknowingly, dangerously close to their world, filled her with tension. It was not fear, exactly, but a sharp awareness that even the past could challenge the present if left unchecked. Later, in the private chambers, Isabella and Seraphine shared a quiet moment. The room was dimly lit, the soft glow of candlelight casting long shadows across the walls. Isabella watched Seraphine's face, noting the strength, determination, and quiet care that defined her. "You trust me," Seraphine said softly. Isabella nodded. "More than anyone else. You've taught me that strength and love are not opposites. They are the same, when you know how to wield them." Seraphine reached for her hand, a small, possessive gesture that spoke of bond, loyalty, and shared destiny. "And I trust you. Always. No one touches what belongs to me." A sound from the estate's outer gates broke the stillness, a faint, careful movement. Isabella stiffened, eyes alert. Seraphine followed her gaze, and together, they moved toward the sound. It was a simple shadow, almost like a trick of the candlelight, but the warning was clear. The city did not rest, and neither could they. They watched as a figure slipped away into the darkness, leaving only the echo of footsteps and the whisper of uncertainty. Isabella's pulse quickened, not with fear, but with readiness. Every challenge, every threat, every echo from the past only sharpened her resolve. She knew the path ahead would not be easy. Liam's shadow lingered, The note hinted at unseen observers, and the city itself seemed to conspire in silence. But she had survived worse. She had grown stronger, smarter, and more capable than she had ever imagined. And she had Seraphine at her side, a partner unmatched in both power and devotion. As the night wrapped around the estate like a protective cloak, Isabella felt the thrill of anticipation stir within her. This was more than survival. This was destiny. This was love tested in fire, power tempered by loyalty, and courage proven in shadow. And somewhere, in the distance, the city waited, full of whispers, danger, and secrets yet to be revealed. Isabella turned to Seraphine, a small, confident smile on her lips. "Let them come," she said quietly. Seraphine's hand found hers, warm and strong. "They will learn," she said, "and they will see. We are untouchable." The night stretched on, silent, but alive. And Isabella knew one truth above all others. No matter what shadows the city sent, no matter what whispers the past carried, she and Seraphine would face it together stronger, smarter, and bound by a love that no one, not even the ghosts of old doubts, could break. And in that moment, Isabella understood that this was only the beginning. The games of power, love, and secrets had just begun, and she was ready. The city had a different feel that night. Fog rolled in low, curling around the street lamps like fingers, and the faint scent of smoke lingered in the air. Isabella could feel it, the weight of the city, alive and restless, watching, listening. It was a city that remembered everything, held grudges, and whispered secrets to those wise enough to hear them. She walked beside Seraphine, their steps synchronized, moving through streets that were familiar yet dangerous. The message from earlier, the note that hinted someone knew too much, still lingered in her mind. She had a sense that the past was stirring, pulling at the edges of her carefully guarded life. And deep down, she knew that curiosity, danger, and unresolved memories had a way of finding their way back. "Do you think he knows?" Isabella asked quietly, her voice almost lost in the fog. Seraphine's gaze was steady, unflinching. "He knows nothing that matters. He is a shadow, and shadows cannot touch what is solid and true." Yet Isabella couldn't completely dismiss the unease. Shadows often hid more than they revealed. And Liam, he had a persistence that could turn curiosity into recklessness. She had faced threats before, but there was something about him that felt like unfinished business. A reminder of a time when she was underestimated, when her potential was invisible to those who should have seen it. The night deepened as they reached an old district, abandoned warehouses lining both sides of the street. The sound of their heels echoed faintly, mingling with distant city noises. A car alarm, the hum of electricity, the faint clatter of someone moving far away. Every sense was alert, every instinct tuned. "Something is wrong," Isabella whispered. Seraphine's eyes narrowed, scanning the shadows. "Yes. The city speaks tonight, and it is angry. Stay close." They entered one of the larger warehouses, its walls cracked and dark, the smell of dust and decay filling the air. Isabella's eyes adjusted quickly. She could see faint marks on the floor, footprints, not old, recent. Someone had been here, and someone was watching. Before she could take another step, a soft noise came from the far corner. A figure stepped into the dim light, tall, hesitant. Liam. His face showed surprise, but also something more: curiosity, concern. A hint of fear he did not fully understand. "Isabella," he began, but she raised her hand, stopping him. "This is not your world," she said firmly. Her voice carried authority, quiet but absolute. "Leave now, and remember what you saw here. Forget it. You are not part of this." He hesitated, glancing past her to where Seraphine stood. Even in the dim light, her presence was undeniable. magnetic, dangerous, commanding. Liam's eyes widened as he realized, finally, that Isabella was not alone, and that the life she had built was far beyond anything he had imagined. You're married, he said, disbelief coloring his tone. To her? Yes, Isabella replied simply. To the person who sees my strength, not my weakness. Liam's expression shifted from shock to unease. I never thought. You never had to. Isabella interrupted. What matters now is the present, and the life I live. You are a ghost from the past, Liam. A ghost that cannot follow me into the future. He swallowed hard, his pride and curiosity warring within him. He wanted to understand, to reclaim some memory of the girl he once knew. But she was gone. That girl no longer existed. Before Liam could speak further, a sudden noise erupted outside a sharp, hurried movement. Isabella's instincts took over immediately. She grabbed Seraphine's arm, and together they moved toward the source of the sound. Shadows shifted, and from the mist emerged figures moving quickly toward them. Masked and dangerous. Ambush, Seraphine said softly, her voice carrying calm authority. Stay close. Isabella's heart beat faster, not with fear but with readiness. They had faced worse, and yet every encounter tested them, sharpened them. She moved with precision, her steps calculated, her reflexes quick. The attackers were fast, but Isabella and Seraphine were faster, their coordination flawless. Isabella's eyes met Seraphine's. And in that glance, a silent understanding passed between them. Trust, partnership, and the unspoken love that bound them. The attackers faltered as Seraphine's presence radiated command. Isabella blocked one man from reaching them, guiding him to stumble past. Harmless, but warned. Another retreated, unsure of the strength before him. In minutes, the danger dissolved. The attackers vanished into the fog, leaving only whispers of threat behind. Liam stood frozen, absorbing the scene. He realized, with a mixture of awe and fear, that Isabella's life was far more than he had ever imagined, and that she had power, courage, and loyalty unmatched by anyone he knew. He began again. Isabella turned to him, eyes steady, voice quiet but firm. You saw nothing. You understood nothing. Go back to the life you know. Stay away from mine. He nodded slowly, recognizing at last that some people were beyond understanding, beyond reach. He turned and disappeared into the night, leaving Isabella with the echo of past doubts fading behind her. The warehouse fell silent. Isabella exhaled, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She turned to Seraphine, who studied her with a faint, approving smile. You handled him well, Seraphine said, as you handle everything. Isabella allowed herself a small laugh, the tension breaking. I have learned from the best. Seraphine's hand brushed against hers, light but possessive. And I have learned to trust you. Always. Together, we are stronger than any threat, stronger than any shadow. They left the warehouse and moved back into the city streets. The fog was thicker now, swirling around their feet and drifting past the street lamps. Isabella felt the pulse of the city beneath her, alive and aware, full of secrets and dangers yet to be revealed. And in that pulse, she recognized the thrill of life, the constant test, the need to be vigilant, and the power of trust, love, and loyalty. Later, back at the estate, Isabella examined the note again. Someone was watching, tracking, perhaps even testing. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, suggesting intelligence and experience. Someone knew the boundaries, but not the strength within. Isabella's mind raced, considering possibilities, planning contingencies. We cannot ignore this, she said to Seraphine, voice steady. Someone is testing us, watching us, learning. Seraphine's eyes glimmered. Let them try. Let them see how we respond. Power is not just in strength, it is in preparation, in understanding, in knowing what the world cannot predict. Isabella nodded. She understood the truth in those words. The city was alive, full of whispers and shadows, but they were not prey. They were predators, masters of their domain, partners in both power and love. That night, Isabella could not sleep. She moved through the estate, checking doors, windows, and the perimeter. Every instinct told her that danger was near, but she did not fear it. She felt alive, alert, and connected to the city, to Seraphine, and to the life she had fought so hard to claim. Somewhere outside, the fog moved, carrying shadows that might be threats or might be nothing at all. But Isabella knew one thing. She and Seraphine were ready. Every step they took together strengthened their bond, sharpened their strategy, and proved that they were untouchable. As she returned to Seraphine's side, she felt the warmth of their connection, the certainty of loyalty, and the thrill of shared power. "Do you think he will try again?" she asked softly. Seraphine's hand found hers, firm and reassuring. "He may, but we will be ready, always, and the city will remember that no one challenges what belongs to us." Isabella smiled, a quiet, confident smile. Liam's curiosity, the mysterious note, the city's shadows, they all meant nothing compared to the bond she shared with Seraphine. Love, trust, and power were intertwined, and together, they would face whatever came. Outside, the city breathed, alive with lights, mist, and secrets. Isabella and Seraphine moved through it as one, unseen yet commanding, partners in a world that demanded both courage and cunning. And in the darkness, something waited. A challenge, a test, a shadow of the past. But Isabella and Seraphine were ready. Their love was strength. Their loyalty was armor. And together, they would face anything because no shadow, no threat, and no curiosity could ever break the bond they had forged. The night stretched on, mysterious and dangerous. But Isabella felt the thrill of anticipation. The games of power, love, and secrets were far from over, and she was prepared for every step. The night was thick with fog, wrapping the city in a pale, silver glow. Street lamps struggled to cut through the mist, casting long shadows that seemed alive, stretching across walls and alleys. Isabella stood at the balcony of the estate, her coat drawn tight, eyes scanning the city below. Somewhere, hidden in those shadows, the past had returned not as a memory, but as a threat, curious and dangerous. Beside her, Seraphine appeared silently, as she always did, a shadow within a shadow. Her presence was calm, commanding, yet fierce, like a storm contained in human form. Isabella felt the pull of her hand, firm and possessive, and allowed herself a moment of comfort. They were not just partners. They were bonded by trust, power, and love. "Tonight, it ends," Seraphine said, her voice low, carrying certainty. "Whatever is coming, whatever has been watching, we face it together, and we will not fail." Isabella nodded, her mind sharp, her senses alert. She had prepared for this. The note, the strange movements, the whispers from the streets, they all led here. And now, the final test had arrived. From the distance, a figure emerged from the fog. Liam. He moved cautiously, his eyes wide as he took in the sight before him. The estate, Isabella, and the presence of Seraphine. He did not understand the world he had stepped into, and that ignorance made him vulnerable. But more than that, he had come, pulled by curiosity, by a desire to reclaim understanding of a past he had never truly known. "Isabella." His voice trembled, unsure, almost fearful. "Stay back," Isabella said, firm and steady. Her eyes held no anger, only clarity. You do not belong here. This is not a game. This is life, and we are not yours to touch. Liam froze, realizing fully that she was no longer the girl he had once dismissed. The strength in her stance, the certainty in her voice, and the presence of Seraphine, all of it made him aware that he had no power here. He was an outsider, and Isabella's world did not forgive outsiders easily. Before he could speak, another movement caught Isabella's attention. Figures slipped from the shadows, armed and precise, a threat both real and dangerous. The rival family had chosen this night to challenge them openly. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. "Move," she commanded, and Isabella followed instinctively, stepping into the path of danger with confidence. The first attacker lunged, and Isabella reacted instantly, guiding him off balance and disarming him without harm. Seraphine moved beside her, her own presence a force that demanded obedience. Every motion was coordinated, precise, and silent, to the untrained eye but deadly effective. Liam watched in awe, finally understanding what Isabella had become. She was not a victim. She was a force, a partner to someone who held the city's power in her hands. And together, Isabella and Seraphine were unstoppable. The attack was brief but tense. One by one, the intruders fell back, retreating into the shadows, defeated by strategy, presence, and instinct. When the last figure fled, the streets were silent once more, the fog absorbing all sounds, leaving only the city and its whispered secrets. Isabella's pulse raced, but not with fear. She turned to Seraphine, who gave a small, approving nod. "You are ready," she said softly. "I've learned from the best," Isabella replied, her voice quiet but proud. For a moment, the world seemed still. The city held its breath. Even the fog paused, as if observing the bond between the two women. Liam, standing at the edge of the estate grounds, realized that he had witnessed the end of the past and the full emergence of a new reality, one he could not influence, one he could not touch. I should have seen this," Liam said finally, his voice subdued, almost respectful. "I never understood who you were, or what you could be." "You didn't need to," Isabella said, her eyes steady, her voice calm. "You are part of the past, and the past is not allowed here." Liam nodded, understanding at last that some doors were closed forever. And Isabella had built not just a door, but a fortress, a life, a love, a power he could never breach. The fog began to lift slightly, and with it came the first faint glow of dawn. Isabella and Seraphine stood together, side by side, overlooking the city. The air was filled with the quiet hum of life, the city's heartbeat strong and steady. The night had tested them, challenged them, but it had also proven one undeniable truth. They were stronger together than anyone could imagine. Seraphine's hand found Isabella's, fingers intertwining with a confidence that spoke volumes. "The city will learn to respect us," she said. "Not out of fear alone, but because strength and loyalty are not easily ignored." Isabella smiled, a mixture of relief and quiet triumph. "They will learn, and those who doubt us will remember what it means to challenge us." The moment was peaceful, yet charged with the awareness that life in their world was never without danger. But Isabella did not fear it. She had become more than the girl Liam had mocked. She had become a leader, a strategist, a partner, and a force in her own right. And she had Seraphine, her anchor, her ally, her love. Hours passed, and the city slowly awakened. The sun rose, painting the skyline with gold and crimson light. Isabella watched it from the balcony, feeling a sense of ownership and belonging, unlike anything she had ever known. The streets that had once seemed menacing now appeared alive with possibilities, opportunities, and challenges she was ready to face. Inside the estate, Isabella and Seraphine moved to the planning room, where maps, messages, and reports of the city's activities were laid out. They reviewed the events of the night, tracking movements, assessing threats, and preparing for the future. Every decision was deliberate, every action calculated. Together, they were unstoppable. "Do you think he'll try again?" Isabella asked, referring to Liam, though her tone was more curious than worried. Seraphine's eyes met hers, steady and confident. "He may wonder, he may watch, but he cannot act. Not here, not now. The past does not control the present. We do." Isabella nodded, feeling the truth in those words settle in her chest. The past, with its doubts and judgments, could only haunt those who allowed it. She had chosen power, love, and loyalty, and those choices had made her untouchable. Later, in the quiet of the estate's private gardens, Isabella allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. The city sprawled below, full of shadows, secrets, and whispers, yet it no longer held fear for her. She had faced threats, tested her limits, and emerged stronger than ever. And through it all, Seraphine had been her guide, her strength, and her partner in both power and love. "Tonight we survived," Isabella said softly. "But tomorrow, the city will keep testing us." Seraphine reached for her, fingers brushing gently. "Let them test us, we are ready, and together, nothing can break us." Isabella leaned into her, feeling the warmth and safety of a love that had been forged in fire, danger, and loyalty. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe in a future that was entirely her own. A future where she was powerful, respected, and loved beyond measure. The city outside continued its rhythm, alive and aware. But Isabella no longer felt its threat. She felt its potential, its beauty, and its challenges, and she knew she could face them all. With Seraphine at her side, she was invincible. In the distance, the fog lifted completely, revealing the sprawling city in the golden light of dawn. Shadows still lingered, whispers still floated on the wind, and secrets waited to be discovered. But Isabella was no longer the girl who had been dismissed and underestimated. She was a woman of strength, courage, and love. And her life, her city, and her empire were hers to command. As she stood on the balcony, hand in hand with Seraphine, she allowed herself one small, confident smile. The past had been conquered, the present was theirs, and the future stretched before them, full of possibilities. Liam, the echoes of old doubt, and the whispers of the city were all behind her now. And Isabella knew, without question, that she would never be underestimated again. Together, they turned from the balcony, stepping back into the heart of their estate. Outside, the city pulsed with life, unaware of the pair who now controlled its fate. And inside, Isabella and Seraphine moved forward, unshaken, untouchable, and bound by a love and loyalty that would endure all shadows. The story of Isabella, the girl who had risen from doubt, had reached its triumph, not in loud victories, but in the quiet strength of survival, love, and mastery. And though the city would continue to test them, they were ready, always ready.